This is a student presentation with the Environmental and Occupational Health Department at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and I'll be using a hypothetical scenario for educational purposes only. Good evening, my name is Taryn Franks, and I am an environmental health researcher. I'm excited to be speaking with the Southern Neuro Research Group, and today I'll be discussing gene-environment interactions, and later on a little more about how gene-environment interactions have an effect on Parkinson's disease. Some topics we will be discussing today are genes, epigenetics, mechanisms of epigenetics, how epigenetics affects neurological disorders, what Parkinson's disease is, and some potential treatments with future innovations pertaining to epigenetics and Parkinson's disease. Here I have a module that shows an introduction to some epigenetic factors. And this could be as simple as your everyday interactions, your diet or financial status, and even get as complex as alternative medicines you may take, such as an herbal supplement, or even your prescription drugs, what diseases or toxic chemicals you're exposed to, and so forth. For start, let's talk about what genes are. And genes are the physical unit of heredity, or what your parents pass down to you. And genes are made of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, to keep it simple. DNA is composed of a microscopic string of chemical units that are all tightly coiled together, and then those form a chromosome, which is each unit of your DNA. And something that I find really interesting is that all humans share at least 99.5% of DNA, up to 99.9%. So it's a very small, less than 0.5% that differentiates all of us. Genetic material, it has 4 functions that it must do in order to do its job correctly. And first, it must replicate itself. And in this process, each DNA strand makes a copy of itself so that every new cell has an exact copy. And next, it'll store that information. And the information that it's storing is all of the traits that are passed down to you. It also stores the codes or instructions for proteins. And proteins make up many tissue in your body. And they're also known as building blocks in the body. And genetic material must also express that stored information. So, for example, that code or instruction that it has stored may be a determinant of you having curly or straight hair. And lastly, genetic material needs to create variation through mutations. So, it's not just socially unacceptable to reproduce with your sibling per se, but it's actually really important for the survivability of our species. And this is because over time, people with the beneficial variations are more likely to survive and then reproduce, which causes a greater portion of the population to adapt to environmental changes. So, what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is the field of sciences that studies chemical modifications made to DNA, and then they assess the proteins that alter gene expression. Epigenetics occurs as a result of our behaviors and environmental factors in life. So your epigenome is actually the state of your DNA in your cells based on your specific epigenetic factors. This means that anyone's epigenome could change multiple times throughout a lifetime. And this could be because maybe you move, or you're on a diet for a couple years, or say you quit smoking one day. The way epigenetics works is not by actually altering the sequence of your DNA, but it just turns genes on or off and changes the way that your genes are expressed. Epigenetics can affect your health in some ways. Environmental factors may cause fertility issues or increase your susceptibility to cancer because of your job during that time, maybe. Infections with disease and illness can even be greater due to epigenetics if you have a weaker immune system, for example. And here I have a picture just showing that your epigenetics isn't just based off of you, but it can actually be affected by generations before you, such as when your grandma is pregnant with your mom, your egg cell is actually inside of your grandmother. So, say she's a smoker and she smokes whenever she's pregnant, you're actually exposed to that as well. So, here we're going to discuss a little bit about epigenetic mechanisms. And at the moment, there are 3 known epigenetic mechanisms. And first, we have DNA methylation. This is where methyl groups are added to DNA at the 5 carbon position of cytosine. And cytosine is one of the bases of a nucleic acid in your DNA. And they have found that patterns in this mechanism are cell and tissue specific because different cells, they need a different gene expression. And next, we have histone modification. In this process, there's a chemical change occurring to histones, and gene expression is also altered in this process depending on how tightly your DNA strands are wrapped around a histone. And there's several types of this, including enzyme catalyzed acetylation, there's methylation, phosphorylation, and ubiquitination. And lastly, there's a process called non-coding RNA, or you can call it ncRNAs for short, associated gene silencing. Here, gene transcription, and that's where a copy of RNA is made from DNA. That process is silenced due to epigenetic modifications of chromatin in the promoter regions. The promoter region is the area of DNA coming up where transcription factors would normally bind to make a copy of DNA. Next, I'm going to cover a little bit about ways that epigenetics affects neurological disorders as a whole. So exposures like air pollution has been linked to neurological disease. Heavy metals are known to cause neurodegeneration, which is damage in the brain, usually by loss of neurons. And this is a really destructive disorder because neurons don't usually do much regeneration throughout life. And in the minimal areas that they do, it's not really guaranteed that they will function at their original potential. So, next, persistent organic pollutants. They are a toxic chemical that don't really break down naturally in the environment. And they usually stay there a long time. And when in an organism's body, such as humans, these pollutants compound over time. And these chemicals have led to cognitive developmental disabilities. Stress can even be an epigenetic factor. And much of this occurs from current lifestyles or stressful events that have happened in the past. So stress can lead to anxiety, depression, and even PTSD. Epigenetic changes are really essential to disease onset and progression, and this just means that your epigenetic factors will determine whether you acquire a neurological disorder and how fast it will progress, because different disorders will progress at different rates too. And I wanted to specifically discuss the neurological disorder Parkinson's disease. And this is a degenerative movement disorder located in the nervous system. What will actually cause many of the symptoms is when neurons start to break down or die. In this process, The chemical messengers for dopamine and norepinephrine are lost, which leads to irregular brain activity and weakened bodily functions like how our body regulates our blood pressure, per se. Now, you may wonder, how does this happen and what causes it? Well, at the moment, the true cause is unknown. However, research suggests that it's most likely due to certain genes and environmental factors playing a role. There are many Parkinson's disease symptoms, and if you know anyone with it, you may could think of some yourself. Tremors are a common symptom that you may notice in someone with Parkinson's disease, but it's important to note that not all people who have tremors have Parkinson's disease. So it's not disease specific. And these tremors can include shaking in the fingers, the feet or jaw, and pill rolling tremors, which is a type that literally looks like someone is rolling a pill between their thumb and their index finger. Many people with Parkinson's disease also have slower movements than normal. It makes those natural tasks like blinking and standing up slow down. And automatic movements, such as, swaying your arms when you walk, may be lost. Their speech is sometimes slurred or spoken in a monotone voice. Posture is often hunched over and drooped, and those with Parkinson's disease are more likely to fall or lose their balance. The best option for treating Parkinson's disease with epigenetics in mind is the targeted and individualized therapies. One method to do this is through reverse epigenetic modification, which basically is the reversing of the way that genes are expressed. And for medical professionals, it's important to understand unique genetic makeups so that they can find specific treatment methods for different individuals. And I'll stress the importance of interprofessionalism in healthcare, because each profession can really bring unique insights for a potential treatment option. And for this reason, it is likely that combination therapies would flourish when combining epigenetic therapies, pharmaceuticals, and behavioral therapists. For the future, I will reiterate again the importance of collaboration between the fields of sciences like epigenetics, neuroscience, genetics, psychology, and environmental health science. There also needs to be larger research studies that include a diverse population, as well as longer studies like longitudinal studies to really grasp the epigenetic factors across a lifetime and what really causes chronic and older age illnesses. And those larger studies, they bring more statistical power when giving results of a study. As time advances, the advancement of epigenetic analysis is important to allow more precise and complex analyses to occur. And finally, in all research, keeping ethics a priority should be of utmost importance to all members involved. Advancing science and medicine should never be more important than the safety and privacy of research participants. Here are my references, and thank you for your attention today.